Good morning from Brisbane in Australia. Kind of in the tropics, actually. Brisbane's in the tropics, halfway up on the right in Australia. So it's winter here, but it's quite pleasant, quite warm, quite nice. So, okay, people. All right. Sorry about last week. Completely missed. But I heard you had a good time. You made the time of it, made it productive. Good morning, Lars. How are you?
Good morning. Good evening from us, from our side.
Everybody, as always, especially here. Yeah, but we make, just remember, just a second, remember what we're doing here. We're going to be offering, imagining, use your mind, use your imagination, use your creative imagination. Think, imagine the whole universe full of marvelous things. We're going to pile them all up, all the amazing things of the universe, pile them all up, and happily offer to the Buddha as a request for these teachings to get realizations so that we can become a Buddha as quickly as possible so we can be a benefit to others.
Sangye shindu nekche uvayi roku nanda shingla chepacho yetsu lama dampa kena kecher kikala kiense chu sintri jitan sampe du che zimala sakye chu ki japa back to soul. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Yachayami.
Okay. Just say it in English together. I'll say it longer first, so really get the feeling of what we're saying, and then we can say 2 times more as the words are. So we're saying, until we're enlightened, and think no matter how long it takes, doesn't matter, until we are enlightened, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, his teachings, and the Sangha. And then think, that's the first point. And now think, as a result of the karmic seeds we leave in our mind from listening to these teachings, may I become a Buddha so I can be a benefit to all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. And by the merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all transmigratory beings. Okay, thank you, Lars. Thank you, Tara. So, okay, what we basically done, what we did last time, basically was present what is called, as Tsongkhapa calls, the 3 principal aspects of the path. So that's always said to be the prerequisite for entering into the Vajrayana. And what that means, as we know from last week, what that means is basically practicing the 3 scopes of the lam-rim. So the 3 principal aspects of the path, as such, is a different way of presenting the lam-rim. The first of these 3 principles that qualifies us to be able to enter into the study and practice of the Vajrayana is renunciation of suffering and its causes. And that's, as we know, that is the of the lam-rim. That's the first and second scopes of the lam-rim, as I always refer to as the wisdom wing. And then if you were on the Hinayana path, you would complete the path here. You would complete the path there. You would abide by the laws of karma. You would discipline your body and speech. You would then go to the second scope and you would understand the delusions. You'd renounce attachment, which is the main cause of suffering in day-to-day life, and the other delusions. And then eventually you would get shamatha, single point of concentration, and then you would realize emptiness. And eventually, in one life or other, you would achieve your own cessation of suffering and its causes. And then when you die, you don't come back. But we're on the Mahayana path. So the second of these three principles is achieved then by moving into the Mahayana path, and we would achieve bodhicitta. This outrageous shift in the mind, this amazing attitude, which is the culmination of love and compassion, that enables you to only want to benefit others, and then to never give up, life after life after life, perfecting the path, perfecting the six perfections. And then the third, which is accomplished at the final stages of the Mahayana, of the six perfections, you would then achieve, as a result of getting shamatha, you would then, a single point of concentration, you would then realize emptiness. So this is the ideal three prerequisites, actually achieving the three. But here, it is said that at least if you have an appreciation for, a sincere understanding of, and appreciation for an understanding of these three, that enables you then to enter into Tantra. So it's the logic we tried to explain last week, the logic, or 2 weeks ago, the logic of this is that you're now qualified. I mean, in other words, it's like I talk about Tantra as being postgraduate. So it's obvious, straight away when you hear that. If you're doing mathematics or music, entering into postgraduate music absolutely implies the earlier stages. That's the point. That's a simple point. It qualifies you. So the essential point we made, one of the essential points we made last time, which is one of the essential points about the philosophy of Tantra, the psychology, the approach psychologically of Tantra, is that on the basis of having a really deep understanding of delusions, which we get in the second scope, which we get when we get renunciation, a deep understanding of how delusions cause us to suffer, and when we really understand that enables us to understand how one of the approaches in Tantra, as we discussed, is the ability to transform, is to utilize and transform delusions on the path to enlightenment. So that's literally impossible to comprehend if we don't understand the delusions. It's impossible to understand if we don't understand how they function. Because otherwise, to hear that you can use attachment on the path to enlightenment sounds so abstract to us, But it's vital to understand the delusions in their character, which in particular means to understand how they are, how they're conceptual stories, especially ignorance, the root delusion, but how they're all conceptual stories, not just especially, but especially attachment. They always talk like that. So we discussed that last time. So let's look at John Landau's course notes and see some of the bullet points of what he discusses, so we can use this as our basis today to talk about. These are the teachings in the course notes by Jonathan Landau, an American teacher. Yeah, so basically his first session is a presentation of these three principles: renunciation, and then the next one, he, as you see on page 20, he discusses all the way through up to 20, up to 30. On the phone, I'm looking at the phone version, actually. I'm looking at the phone version. He then discusses the second one, bodhicitta. And they say that, with bodhicitta, this extraordinary attitude, this is what drives the practitioner to want to practice Tantra. It is always said that it's the quick path. That's how they talk about it, the quick path. They talk about how practicing this, accumulating, the amount of time it takes us to accumulate the appropriate amount of wisdom and compassion to accomplish Buddhahood using the sutra path up till now, in other words, they talk about 3 countless great eons, an enormous amount of time. Whereas by practicing Tantra on the basis of having the 3 principles, it's an extremely fast path. But that's a really technical point, which sounds very abstract to us when we hear it. Simply because on the sutra path, if you look at the 6 perfections, after you've accomplished bodhicitta, you now practice the 6 perfections. Well, the first 4 are accumulated life after life after life in relation to sentient beings. You perfect generosity, you perfect morality, you perfect patience, and you perfect perseverance. So all the work you do in relation to sentient beings, life after life after life, you're gradually accumulating, building up. They talk about it like this: building up, accumulating the amount of merit that's necessary to achieve enlightenment. And then in your so that's done from day to day, in life to life. And then separately in your meditation on emptiness, you accumulate wisdom. So these 2 accumulations are accumulated separately. That's how they talk on the sutra teachings. But in the tantric teachings, it's a technical point. The accumulation of merit and wisdom is done simultaneously. It's a technicality. We're not even going to go into that. It's a very technical point. And we're not going to be studying Tantra in depth with no absolute certainty. But they're accumulated simultaneously. And the only reason a person would want to take the quick path is because of this extraordinary compassion, unbelievable, as Lama Zopa calls it, unbearable compassion for the suffering of sentient beings. So easily we sort of think, oh, that will be natural. Of course I want the quick path. I want to get enlightened quickly. But the thing is, if you think about it like this, the kind of person who's prepared, who's capable of using the quick path or understands it, is a person. It's like a mother for her precious child. You can either walk somewhere to get the medicine for your precious child, or you can fly there. But the point is, the person who's got bodhicitta would happily walk there, would happily walk on their knees, no matter how long it takes, to help sentient beings. But obviously, if there is a quick path, they would happily take it, because their wish to become enlightened is so urgent. And this is quite hard. Of course, it's quite hard to understand that level of compassion. But that's the meaning. That's why that's a person who's qualified would be then happily take the quick path, because literally the suffering of others is so unbearable. To the bodhisattvas, it's unbearable to see the suffering of others. So there's incredible courage, would happily walk, crawl to get that medicine, no matter how long it takes. But so they're joyful that there is a quick path. The second, I'm looking at John Landau's notes, the second prerequisite, he talks about bodhicitta. John refers to it, there's a term they use, it's the lightning vehicle. John refers to it here. And then finally, the realization of emptiness. So you could say that the renunciation gives you the kind of the understanding of what the delusions are. And it's only really then, if you renounce, the only person who's qualified is a person who can understand the delusions, who's wants to give up attachment, suffering, and its causes. Then this bodhicitta energizes you to want the enormous compassion, to want to have the quick path. But then the wisdom of emptiness is what you need to realize. There's no way we can practice Tantra if we don't understand emptiness. Okay. So I'm hoping you've read some of the course notes in the last 2 weeks. So John Landau's, or his first session, is the three prerequisites. So now let's have a look at his second one. So then he does it. Then he did a meditation. Hopefully you did that. You did a meditation on bodhicitta. Okay. So now what to talk about today then? Okay. So one of the key things we can discuss, one of the key component of your day-to-day practice, So day-to-day practice, we know if we've got the 3 principles, the day-to-day practice in your meditation, you'd be using these, to meditate on, say, renunciation. You'd understand, first of all, you'd meditate on karma. You'd understand the technicalities of karma. You'd go through and in your meditation, you would do these analyses of these various points in order to familiarize your mind with karma. So by listening to the words, listening to the teachings, thinking about the meaning, and then on your cushion, doing a kind of a really accurate meditation, an accurate intellectual an actual analytical meditation, you would take those various points that you've studied and you would go through them in your meditation in a deeper way, kind of internalizing the meaning. And then in day-to-day life, you would abide by the laws of karma and watch your mind and body and speech like a hawk. And then with renunciation, then with the delusions, you'd study them, you'd think about what attachment is, you'd understand how it's a disturbing emotion, you understand how it is the cause of this, the cause of the suffering of change. You'd learn to understand that suffering and want to get rid of it, and in your meditation internalize it. So the meditations we're doing in the Sutra Path are all what we call analytical meditations. So coming from the Vajrayana, also we know from day one in the Sutra teachings, we do use this technique that's called visualization, and usually it's the Buddha as Shakyamuni. There's really, in Sutra, there's there's the Nirmanakaya form of the Buddha, which is depicted by the statues and the tankas of Shakyamuni Buddha. He's the main Buddha. We would use visualization meditations, visualizing him in front of us, or visualizing him above our crown, and then various visualizations of receiving blessings and so on and so forth. So we learn from day one in the Tibetan tradition, because it's rooted in the Vajrayana, it's part of the whole path. So we would use this system of visualization, which is really from the tantric technique. So the key aspect of practice in the Vajrayana are the meditations of the different deities. Deity is the word they use really in Tantra, referring to a Buddha, referring to a Buddha. Basically, a deity is a Buddha, but it's only really used, it seems to be only really used in the Vajrayana. So as we discussed, I think last week, the main aspect of the Buddha that we visualize and learn about in Tantra is the Sambogakaya, this so-called enjoyment body, which can only be seen, only be accessed mentally by the Arya bodhisattvas, a bodhisattva who has achieved the realization of emptiness. They're now capable in their meditation of seeing literally with their mind at a subtler level in the Sambogakaya. The Sambogakaya form is not available to us through the senses. We can't see the Buddha in that way. The Nirmanakaya, we can see in the Buddha is, we can see that at the time of Shakyamuni, we would have seen with our eyes, if you like, the form of the Buddha. But even then, not really. I mean, they talk about the 80, and what is it? The minor and major marks of a Buddha. They can't be seen by our eyes either. So the visualization practices are one of the key methods in Tantra of practicing these deities. So one of the ways we talked, I think one of the ways they describe these types of practices. So, for example, so what we said last week also, I think we mentioned, the form of the sutra is Shakyamuni, but in Tantra, Dorje Chung in Tibetan, or Vajrayana, Dorje Chung, or what's his name?
Vajradhara.
Vajradhara is in Sanskrit, is the name of the Buddha, who is the tantric aspect, if you like, of Buddha. He's blue, with it either without a wisdom mother or with a wisdom mother. And then, as I mentioned, the five Buddha families and all the other thousands and thousands of Buddhas manifesting in the Sambogakaya form, which are basically, and this is the point, basically Tantra is psychology, and these deities are simply, not simply, but this is the essence of it, if we can understand it, manifestations of different psychological qualities, different states of mind. So, for example, the three main deities are the representation of the three essential qualities of a Buddha. For example, Chenrezig, compassionate-eyed one in Sanskrit, Avalokitesvara. He's the manifestation of compassion, one of the manifestations. Then you have the manifestation of, you have the compassion that wants to benefit sentient beings. Then you have wisdom, the wisdom to know how to benefit sentient beings. And that wisdom is manifested by Manjushri, Manju, gentle voice, Jamyang in Tibetan. Shri is like Lord or something. And then the third quality of a Buddha, the third essential quality of a Buddha is the compassion to want to benefit others, the wisdom to know how, but the third is the ability or the power, the capability of doing so. And that often is depicted by, say, Vajrapani. He's a wrathful Buddha, blue, or Tara. So these are the three deities, Buddhas, that represent those are three essential qualities. For example, so these deities, they're manifestations of these three qualities we want to accomplish. So, and then there are thousands of them, because literally we can see we have thousands of states of mind, don't we? So every one, almost you could say, simple way of putting it, every one of the different virtues, you could say there's a Buddha that represents that virtue. So by doing the visualization practice, the whole form of the deity practice is a way of internalizing these Buddhas, becoming these Buddhas. So the very simple methodology is you start with visualizing outside you that deity. For example, Chenrezig, let's say. You imagine in front of you the Sambogakaya form. So ideally, as you get more advanced, you would literally visualize every tiny aspect. You become utterly familiar with, say, the picture, the statue, and in your meditation, you would then construct that visualization. So clearly, we can see from learning in the sutra teachings, the fifth perfection, the shamatha, calm abiding, is obvious to do Tantra properly. To have proper visualization, you need concentration. Then you can have this absolutely perfect visualization, imagining exactly each detail, every tiny detail. You would imagine that in your meditation. So of course we do our best. If we have no concentration, some of us have more capability than others of visualizing. One of the miseries we all have, and when we hear about these meditations, we realize, oh my God, I can't visualize. But it's okay. We start where we are, So even if you can't visualize a single thing in your mind, imagine, can't imagine a single thing, but at least you can feel the presence of the Buddha, and intellectually how he looks. You would really become familiar with this, So the essence of it is you'd visualize, let's say, Chenrezig outside you, and then it's there are various components of this way this practices are constructed. We use the term they refer to as a sadhana. I do not know how that translate that word. I do not know. I don't know Sanskrit. I have no idea what it means. I'm so sorry. But you would have this, and some can be very short, some can be very long. But the essence of it is you'd visualize the Buddha in front of you, and then you would do prayers of refuge, of bodhicitta, always bodhicitta, because this is what's energizing you to want to become Chenrezig. And you might do the 4 immeasurables. It could be a very long practice. It could be a very short practice. And you can, once you establish the main components, you can make up your own, But all these deities have their own many kinds of different sadhanas, this construction of these practices. And then at some point, very simply, depending on the different levels of Tantra, I'm sure John goes into these 4 levels. They talk about the 4, and we're not going to go into great depth at all. I'm not capable anyway. There's 4 levels. They talk about the first level is Kriya, as they call action or Kriya Tantra. So, for example, Chenrezig, the very popular form of the Buddha, is from the Kriya Tantra, action Tantra. Then you've got the second level, the third level, and the fourth one is known as Mahayana Yoga Tantra. It's the highest, they call it highest Yoga Tantra, or sometimes Rinpoche will call it highest Tantra. And the deities we might know about, for example, Vajrayogini or Yamantaka or Hevajra, practiced in the Sakya tradition, they are from that level. So, the principle is the same. You visualize the Buddha out there, you take refuge, generate bodhicitta, make many aspirations, then you would make many offerings, you'd take refuge, generate bodhicitta, make many offerings, make many requests. This is where you accumulate the merit in relation to that deity. And then at some point, speaking very simply, you would then imagine that Buddha coming to the crown of your head. There's a certain way of doing the visualization, but the essence of it is this. And then you would visualize that visualization absorbing into you through your crown. And then there's various meditations you would do mentally of visualizing then. And then the crucial piece would be you would then visualize dissolve, as they say, dissolving. You become oneness. You'd imagine becoming. And one simple way is thinking your body, the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha becomes oneness with the body, speech, and mind of yourself. So, of course, the other crucial component here would be Guru Yoga, and we'll go into this in more detail. Of course, you'd be imagining. It's a vital component in the tantric meditations. When you visualize Chenrezig, you're visualizing Chenrezig as the manifestation of your guru's mind. So we've talked about Guru Yoga. I've talked about Guru devotion back in the modules, but here it's an absolutely essential component of these meditations. It's a essential component of all these meditations. So you would have imagined your guru's mind manifesting as Chenrezig, and then when you dissolve after generating bodhicitta, taking refuge, many prayers, and then making many offerings and making many requests, you would then, as I said, visualize Chenrezig coming up your crown. They all have different ways of doing it, but essentially the guru deity, that's how they refer to the guru deity, your guru's mind as Chenrezig, coming above your, dissolving into you, and the energy of your body, speech, mind, merging with the body, speech, and mind of your guru, oneness with the body, speech, mind of the deity. These three become one. Union, oneness. We often talk about that, as Lama calls it. So then there's a whole technique of dissolving, literally a very precise way of kind of dissolving this yourself as the guru deity into emptiness, as they put it, into emptiness. So this is a method that actually then is combined with the visualization of the death process. I mean, Lama Zopa talks about this, and I'm going to read from this. I think it's very, very helpful. I'm going to read actually from Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings in his book, How to Face Death Without Fear. There's a chapter there. I'm going to read from that right now and try and explain what I'm saying. There's a chapter in there called Death is What the Yogis Have Been Waiting For. Which of course sounds hilarious to us because of becoming familiar with this particular practice. Because this is the practice, this deity yoga is the main technique that one uses to practice literally becoming the Buddha, literally you becoming the Buddha. These visualization techniques structured in these sadhanas, Let me see if I can find Lama Zopa's book, and I'll discuss what he says in there. It's very helpful. Okay. So we'll do it. I'll do it in a second. So then what you see, right, you do this visualization of the death process, combining that with this you dissolving in, as I said, dissolving into emptiness. There's a very detailed way of doing those visualizations. Imagining as you visualize dissolving from your crown down to your heart chakra and your feet up to your heart chakra. It's really replicating the death process, going through the 8 stages. And when you finally get to the 8th one, which is called the clear light mind, that's when you have completely dissolved into emptiness. There's no longer any appearance of anything. And then there's a meditation you would do right there that's called space-like emptiness. Space-like emptiness. technically space-like isn't the meaning of emptiness. Emptiness doesn't mean there's nothing there. But they say when your mind is subtle and you're having a direct insight into emptiness, there would be no appearances of anything. Your mind has gone to a subtler level. There would be no appearances of anything. So this meditation, you would practice meditating on the emptiness of yourself as the deity. And then out of that, and then in these sadhanas at some point, you then from this visualization, meditating on emptiness, imagining you being the Dharmakaya, then you would manifest yourself, as they say, out of that emptiness. You would then manifest as Chenrezig. You would then visualize yourself literally as Chenrezig, as the deity. So this is why you'd need to take an empowerment. These meditations we can do very happily without any empowerment. But you could even do you could do a meditation on emptiness, but you would not actually manifest yourself. You wouldn't visualize yourself as Chenrezig. You would maybe visualize, you'd think, you'd imagine you're still in your own body, in your own form, but you might imagine Chenrezig above your crown or something, but you wouldn't actually manifest as the deity. When you've received the empowerment, you have the permission to do that. And this is where you do these essential practices. And these types of practices, visualizing the deity outside, then absorbing the deity into you, and then imagining I am the Dharmakaya, and then you would manifest as the Sambogakaya, the light body form of Chenrezig, and then do the practices again. So this is literally a method of training yourself to become the Buddha, quite literally to become the Buddha. You practice, you train, seeing yourself as Chenrezig. So when you do these practices and you've received empowerment, and eventually when you have a commitment, actually in Tantra, you have a commitment in general in daily life to imagine yourself as the deity. It's a practice. So this is enormously hard because look at us, we totally committed to being this body of bones, flesh and bones. We look in the mirror, we don't see a deity, we see, fat old me, isn't it? So, this is a very powerful practice, utilizing Vajrayana psychology, utilizing the psychology of Tantra, where you learn to train your mind to think of yourself as the deity. When we really, when we finally take an empowerments in the highest yoga tantra, then you would have tantric vows, and various commitments. And one of the key commitments is to always see yourself, imagine yourself, remember yourself as the deity. So this literally, very practically, is training yourself to become the deity. It's pretty straightforward. We think it's just imagination. Oh, I'm not a Buddha. Don't be ridiculous. How can you say I'm Chenrezig? But you have to train yourself. It's not complicated concept. When you're in the very first day of playing music, playing the piano, of course, you're a joke. You can't even play the C major scale. You don't even know the name of the notes. But you're training yourself, are you not, to be a pianist. You can't say you're not a pianist. You're hardly qualified yet, but you can't say you're not a pianist. You are training yourself to see yourself, to imagine yourself, to identify yourself as a pianist. It's hardly rocket science. We understand this. We understand this perfectly well. So, of course, you need to have this confidence, isn't it? You've got to have some confidence. So there's this wonderful phrase they have in Tantra that you have to cultivate divine pride. It's such a lovely concept, You have to cultivate this divine pride of being the deity. So naturally with music, let's say you have no confidence, you can think you're a complete creep and you can't play piano, but you don't think you're capable, it's not possible. Oh, I'm not a pianist. How can I be a pianist? I promise you, you will never become a pianist. It's pretty straightforward. You've got to fake it till you make it. And this is very much an attitude in this approach, You've got to have this confidence that you are training to be Chenrezig. And this is a major technique, a literal technique, this mental attitude of then of having the divine pride, as they say, of being the deity. I mean, it's really psychologically practical. It's really, and it's brilliant psychologically. It's so powerful psychologically. It's so unbelievably helpful for our minds. And Lama Yeshe, you see, from the very beginning of teaching modern people who happen to be Westerners, hippies, you know, in the late 60s, early 70s, he could see crystal clear, having this wisdom that knows the mind. He could see just by our presentation where our minds were coming from. And he'd always joke about this self-pity me, he said. He said, you people don't even know how to be happy, you know. You're completely addicted to your misery. And why? Think about it. This is a very clear point. Because why? Because we identify ourselves as our delusions. So in other words, if you're trying to play piano and you're practicing, oh, I can't play piano, I'm completely hopeless, I'm no good, I can't play piano, oh my God, I don't know any theory, I don't remember, blah, 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 never, endlessly identifying with not being a pianist, with being hopeless. Now that really is how we are. We know this so intimately. We have delusions. We learn deeply in the lam-rim. But and they're vivid, and they're the main players in our head. We feel that sometimes. So naturally, we identify ourselves as angry, jealous, depressed, anxious, low self-esteem, no good. We know this so vividly. So Lama could see from the very beginning that this idea of seeing ourselves as the deity, of literally lifting our view of ourself. This is the essence of tantric psychology. This is the essence, and it's just marvelous. It's just marvelous when we understand it, but it's understandable. So when you are practicing piano, practicing tennis, practicing cooking, you can see if you have confidence. I mean, you see these, you know, you've got this confidence. You see 16-year-old children, you know, winning Wimbledon, winning the US Open, for example. I mean, that would need, you think about it, unbelievable confidence. In literally, you'd have to have confidence that you are a tennis player. If you couldn't have doubts. When you have doubts, that's when you'd lose the game. So this confidence is so logically important. So we train ourselves to cultivate this, as they call it, it's such a lovely phrase, divine pride. So this is a completely different attitude. And this is what Lama would teach from day one. And I remember not really comprehending what Tantra meant, but it just sounded wonderful. It sounded so delicious, you know, when Lama talked about it like this. And he could see it was such a powerful technique for us to forcefully lift us out of this self-pity, this constant identification of ourselves as a disaster. So it's really obvious, as I said, the logic of divine pride is so clear. You literally have to fake it till you make it, because you're not Chenrezig. It's a complete joke to say that you're Chenrezig yet. You're not a fully qualified pianist yet, but with the confidence that you are, meaning you identify with the potential, then that enables you to really become a musician. It's so logical psychologically, you know. So the words I'm saying here, we totally understand that they mightn't frame it like that from 2,000 years ago in India, or 1,500 or 12 or 1,000 years ago in Tibet, because we speak very differently. But this is the essence of that approach, you know. And we can see the benefit. So one of the things that Lama would always get us to try and see, this is how you can bring this into daily life. You know, you can bring this into daily life by having it's like having confidence and real self-respect. So when you're a child and you've got confidence, you can play that piano, presenting yourself beautifully with confidence, playing it, even though you're a little child, because you've got this inner confidence in your own capacity as a musician. We really understand this, you know, and that's the struggle we have in practicing identifying ourselves as a Buddha. And so, of course, we're not a Buddha yet. You're not a fully qualified tennis player yet. You're not a fully qualified musician yet. But this attitude of having this attitude of divine pride is a powerful technique that actually enables you, combined with the techniques of becoming that Buddha. You know? So this is a marvelous way that Lama got. This is how we can bring this approach into daily life, you know, having this attitude of divine pride. I think it's just the most wonderful phrase, divine pride. We hear it in the beginning, but I know when I first heard the teachings, I thought it was, you know, just you hear it. No, I can't have divine pride. What does it mean I've got divine pride? No, I'm not a Buddha. And we forget it all. We're just overwhelmed by our own misery and overwhelmed by your delusions, because they vividly clear in our mind. So this is why these meditations can really lift us, you know, visualizing Chenrezig out there, or visualizing Tara out there, and at some point, even without having the empowerment to see yourself as a deity, but kind of imagining being oneness with these qualities. In other words, part of the whole approach psychologically in Tantra, bringing it into daily life, is more and more identifying yourself with your virtues. And these deities are just different manifestations of different virtues, you know. Identifying with your virtues. This is an incredibly powerful technique. It's so obvious, you know, but we almost are addicted to not doing it. It's hard for us to imagine being fully developed, even mentally. Imagine having marvelous virtues fully developed, love, wisdom, compassion, and so on. It's hard for us because we're so caught up in the misery. We're so caught up in identifying ourselves with our delusions. So this is one of the really essential practices of Tantra, the psychological approach, you know. This is the meaning of it. This is the essence of this psychology of Tantra, the psychology of Tantra. And Lama Yeshe talks so beautifully in this way. He really encourages us, you know, and just hearing the words lifts us. Kind of wow, you know. We can see when we do the lam-rim, it's really hard to identify with your virtues, because the whole of the lam-rim is rubbing your nose in the delusions in great depth. And we need to understand the delusions in order to want to get beyond them. But we sometimes can get addicted to our delusions. And, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so hopeless, I've got so much attachment, so much anger. Oh my God, we go crazy. So this is why Lama from the beginning would give us these meditations, would lead us in these very simple deity meditations. And even though when you didn't understand what it meant, just the words would lift you, you know. So marvelous. But we can see the benefit of it is incredible. There's a lovely saying in this whole attitude of visualizing the Buddha in front of you and then imagining becoming that Buddha, then eventually out of emptiness, literally visualizing yourself literally as that Buddha. They call it, the approach is called bringing the future result into the present. It's the epitome of positive thinking. We know this. This is literally the epitome of the psychology of positive thinking. That's what it means, as we know from day-to-day psychology, identifying yourself with your good qualities. And so I remember, you know, or like visualizing, let's say you're learning to play tennis, you do a meditation where you visualize yourself winning Wimbledon. You visualize yourself playing that game and winning the tennis match. That's positive thinking. And we can see it gives you the courage then to play the tennis because you imagine the result. That's exactly what they mean by bringing the future result, your Buddhahood, right into the present, imagining you are already a Buddha. It's so delicious. I mean, if we hear it as just kind of vague Tibetan ritual, we can't really get the meaning, you know. But when we understand psychologically the meaning of these deities as literally being manifestations of different psychological qualities that we want to cultivate, this is one approach. Some of the deities are the manifestation of the virtues that we want to develop. That's literally what these deities are. So initially hearing, you see this, you know, a picture of Chenrezig, this white male being, and they sometimes look all the same. You can't tell the male or the female from the, you know, much because they look so androgynous. It's sort of a bit abstract to say this is psychology. What we see as art, what we see as a picture, what we see as a statue. But really, it's really marvelous that we can understand this. You know, if you see a person shouting with anger, screaming, is that not a manifestation of anger? Right there, you see a person with their body and speech. The body is the body, the speech is the speech, they're not the mind, but it's fairly evident if you see a person screaming and you hear their words, you can go, they're angry. So what is that anything other than a perfect manifestation of an angry mind? It's a visual, it's mental, it's visual and verbal. That's just physical and mental. Physical and verbal, that's not the mind, but the mind in there, totally enraged, overwhelmed by anger, then it shows every single, you just have to look with your eyes, hear with your ears, and immediately you go, there is anger. So that's a manifestation of anger. It's not how we talk, but we can hear exactly that is what it's like. So these deities, these first lot, the ones that are the manifestation of positive qualities, we mightn't see Chenrezig as compassion and love. So of course you have to learn it. It's obviously a cultural thing coming from India, coming to Tibet, thousands of years. This, you know, it developed over the centuries. And we can see it seems fairly arbitrary. Well, why is compassion depicted as this male form having 4 hands, holding this and having this? Because that's just what cultivated over the centuries. There's nothing absolute about it, you know. But you learn that. You have to learn it. It's like a language, the visual language. You learn. You're shown a picture in this tradition, for example, of Chenrezig, and then you learn that's the manifestation of compassion. It's not evident to you. Just like if you're learning tennis, but you've never heard of tennis, and someone shows you a picture of Roger Federer holding a racket, doing a serve, that's the manifestation of a tennis player. But you don't know that initially. You've never heard of tennis. And then you learn, oh, that's tennis. Or why is he holding his hand above his head? Because he's doing a serve. So we learn the meaning of that, and then you watch Roger Federer play tennis, and then you want to become like Roger Federer, so you replicate his movements. He will give you details of how to do it, but you could replicate exactly those movements. That's how you become a tennis player. So Roger Federer is the manifestation of a tennis player. We get this point, you know. A person shouting and screaming is the manifestation of anger. Well, Chenrezig is the manifestation of fully developed compassion. So Tara, for example, this green lady, you know, looking gorgeous in this form that's unique to Tantra, not looking like a monk, not looking in the, you know, the monk one, also the monk one in the sutra teachings is the manifestation of subdued body, speech, and mind. It's really obvious. If you look at Shakyamuni, you look at it, oh, there's a lovely looking peaceful person, you'll say. Well, so every tiny aspect of his body has a meaning, just like Roger Federer holding the tennis racket exactly this way, his left foot exactly that way. He's showing you exactly how to be to do a good serve. Well, Chenrezig, Shakyamuni is that as well. He's the manifestation of purified body, speech, and mind. He's the perfect depiction of that. So it's not necessarily a tantric thing, but it's even in the sutras the same. But the tantric deities are these totally different aspects. We'll discuss this more. Totally different. Tara is not looking like a nun. You know, she's different. She's a whole different aspect in Tantra, which we'll discuss in a minute. But here she is. So again, you see this green lady with naked breasts and wearing rainbow clothes, her one leg drawn in, one leg out, relaxing. Then you learn the meaning of every one of those positions. So she, for example, is, as I said, one of the depictions of this action, this courage to act, the 3 essential qualities of a Buddha. So her leg drawn in, her left leg drawn in, her right leg relaxing in this kind of relaxing pose. This indicates her action energy. She's happy to hop up, to help sentient beings. So every tiny part of the picture, like every tiny part of Federa's body in that picture, has a meaning, you know. It's a visual representation of a psychological quality that you want to cultivate. For example, Chenrezig, for example, Tara, for example, Shakyamuni. So this is really powerful to understand it like this. And it makes sense when we hear it like this. And then mentally identifying with that. It's so psychologically brilliant, you know. But of course, you have to remember it. And this is the hard part. You know, some of us have been doing these practices for years. You do them on your cushion, you say the words, I am, this, that, and then we forget all about it as soon as we open our eyes. We're back to being big, fat, miserable me, you know, because that's the one we see vividly. So the ability, even in your daily life, to remember I am Tara, to remember I am Tara, it lifts you. It lifts you. I am a tennis player. It lifts you. It gives you courage, and it enables you to become that tennis player. It enables you to become that deity. This is so delicious, actually, if we could hear it. But we need courage to do it because we are addicted, as Lama says, we're addicted to our misery. Oh, I'm not compassionate. I'm not loving. I haven't got courage. Blah, blah, I'm no good. I'm not this. I'm not that. We're so addicted to that. So remembering the meaning psychologically of these deities is so helpful. I cannot tell you. Divine pride. What a lovely saying, you know. Divine pride. And I think also we can see as we progress from the very beginning of totally being nobody and nothing and a victim and having no practice, no awareness of our potential, you know, you're completely hopeless looking. You shout when you're angry, you get depressed, you're sad, you cry, up and down like yo-yo, complete victim mentality. We act that out in daily life. Anybody just has to watch us who's got half an ounce of wisdom can see where the depiction of jealousy, of anger, of depression, of anxiety, up and down like yo-yos. So then as you start to practice, first, junior school, entry level, grade 1, you start to discipline your body and your speech. So even with a little bit of practice, already you start to become more disciplined, and your presentation to the world is of a more disciplined person. Whereas we wear our hearts on our sleeve, don't we? But as you get more practice, you start to not vomit out every word you feel, not act out everything you do. You control your body. You don't have 5 pieces of cake. You don't say every word you feel. You discipline your body. You discipline your speech. So you would have looked to others. Oh, wow, Rabina's growing up. Look at her. She's more disciplined. You can tell by our behavior. We show who we are, you know. And then as you keep progressing and you start to get renunciation, you become even more blissful to look at for other people, because now you're subduing your mind, and your mind now you now look more joyful because you're not, you know, attachment is less, anger is less, so you'll even be more radiant. We know this logically. I'm just using this idea of how we are the physical manifestation, the verbal manifestation of whatever's in the mind, you know. It's not rocket science. And then as you eventually get to compassion wing and you start to cultivate love and compassion, you become even a more radiant person, more marvelous person, thoroughly disciplined. Every word that comes out of your mouth is useful. Every word that comes out of your mouth is kind and compassionate. It is obvious, you know. So this is what is utilized. This whole approach is utilized to the nth degree in the tantric approach, you know. It's so delicious. It's so joyful to even hear it, you know. When we do hear it, we would want to see ourselves as a deity. We would want to remember we are the deity. If we've taken empowerments, we are committed. When you've taken highest yoga tantric empowerments and the tantric commitments and the tantric vows, you are committed to remember you are the deity every second. You are committed to see everybody else as a deity, the whole universe. You are committed to hear all sounds as mantra. And you are committed to seeing the entire physical universe as the Pure Land of the deity. I mean, it's so delicious, you know, if we hear it like this. It's so helpful. It's so marvelous. And all you're doing is faking it till you make it. And faking it till you make it is not just crossing your fingers. It is a technique. You know, when you've got the courage to go out into that tennis court and act like a tennis player, you are faking it till you make it. But it switches into confidence, which enables you to play tennis. It's so obvious, you know. It's so obvious. If you think, oh, I can't drive a car, I'm hopeless, you better not get behind a wheel. I promise you, you'd better stay right there in the passenger seat, because you will make a total mess and have a panic attack on the freeway and crash the car because you believe you can't drive a car. So it's so obvious, this idea, this positive thinking, which is exactly what Tantra is. I mean, clearly it's more than that. As Lama Yeshe says, Tantra is highly technical, you know. But it's a huge shift that we have to make in our minds, a huge shift, training ourselves to identify with being that deity, having the qualities of that deity. It's so delicious, I tell you, but it's hard to remember because we're addicted to identifying with the other rubbish, you know. So it's not fantasy. This is the thing. Fantasy is when you're really seriously mentally ill and you really don't know reality. It's not fantasy. It's intelligence. No one says that when you sit out there on the court trying to act like Roger Federer that you're living in a fantasy world. No, you're not. You're lifting yourself with a confident attitude to be a tennis player. And that confidence sustains you. You can see it in some of the, there's one Australian guy, I shouldn't be talking about people criticizing, this genius, technically brilliant tennis player called Nick Kyrgios. He's kind of famous in the tennis circuit because he gets hugely angry and petulant and throws his racket. And you can see he's playing they say he's one of the most brilliant, technically capable tennis players. But it's evident, so blatantly evident, that he's not stable in his mind. He gets carried away. So when he's winning, he's like a total genius and he's flying on it. And you can see he's sustaining his confidence. But as soon as he starts getting beaten, then he sometimes completely collapses. He's angry, he throws his racket, he doesn't hit things properly. So of course he's going to lose. It's so obvious, you know. Of course he's going to lose the game. And then freaks out, no, I don't want to play tennis, up and down like a yo-yo, because, you know, he hasn't got the first stage of practice, junior school entry level grade 1, control your body and speech. It's so clear in every area of your world. If you can't do that, you're a disaster, you know. Which is why it's a prerequisite to be able to practice Tantra psychologically. If psychologically you don't even know what a delusion is, you haven't even got to high school yet, you've got no idea what attachment is, you've got no idea how to define the different delusions, not to mention the virtues, how can you possibly practice this attitude of having divine pride, of identifying with your wisdom? You don't even know what it means. So it's sort of logical. You've got to go through the stages of practice first to be able to even to hear these words, you know. Are we communicating? I think that's pretty good substance for today so far. Let's discuss this view, this attitude, just the attitude. Let's discuss it, okay? Any questions, please? Exactly about this. Questions, please. If there are any.
Christine, go ahead.
Hello, Venerable.
Hello, dearest one. Talk to me.
I wanted to ask you if we are training to be a deity. I think it would be sensible to practice one deity for a longer time. So how do we choose one?
Good point. A really good point, Christine. Absolutely. That is exactly correct. So eventually, as we practice and we take more empowerments and we learn about it, or even before you take the empowerments, you learn to take one. They say, I don't know the meaning of the word in Tibetan, but it's called you identify your yidam. Yidam is the word. I don't know the meaning in Tibetan. That is your meditational deity, the deity that you identify with. Now, clearly, because the deities are all representations of different psychological qualities. So, for example, we've only discussed at the moment the positive qualities, like there's Chenrezig, compassion, there's Tara, there's so many of them. So there's another whole level, before I just say answer directly, there's another whole attitude in Tantra, which is one of the crucial differences in Tantra, where you actually, this is why they talk about utilizing the delusions. There's another whole group of deities that are manifestations of the delusions, but a purified aspect of the delusions. Did we go through the 5 Dhyani Buddhas last time? We didn't, did we? Or did we? We didn't. Okay, this is really lovely. There are the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. We'll discuss this maybe later in this next 30 minutes. There are the 5 Buddha families, they call them. People use different terms. So all the Buddhas fit into those 5. So for example, and the particular characteristic of these 5 is that they're purified aspects of 5 different delusions. So Amitabha, for example, is a purified aspect of attachment. Akshobhya is a purified aspect of anger, for example. Vairocana is a purified aspect of ignorance. So that all the Buddhas that fit into those categories. So, for example, in our tradition, in the Gelugpas, the deities we use most, the ones that are the purification, the manifestation of attachment, are Haruka Chakra Samvara. He's the main mother tantra, they refer to as mother tantra, which is the type of practices that utilize attachment, that emphasize the transformation of attachment. And Haruka Chakra Samvara is the main one in that aspect, a male deity. And another one is Vajrayogini, a female Buddha, and she's a she's a manifestation of desire, a utilization of desire energy. One we can discuss all this. So one way of identifying your yidam, one approach would be, because they're all psychological, is to know you have to know your mind well. You've got to know your mind well. So if you know sometimes they say, if you know your main delusion, this is a really interesting discussion. We've all got all the delusions. We've all got all the virtues, but in different recipes, We've got to get rid of all the delusions and cultivate all the virtues. But in a particular lifetime, we have a certain style, certain aspect. So we can see some people, their main problem is anger. Some people, their main problem is pride. Some people, their main problem is attachment. We've all got all of them. But often, it seems to me, if you look at the way you suffer in life, so if pride is your main delusion, you would suffer in your life really strongly for always being so offended by people, so insulted, easily so upset because people don't appreciate you, people insult you, and you feel so wounded, This is a way that some of us really suffer. So you could say that pride is your main delusion, and it's very common. Absolutely, we've all got it. So then what your deity then might well be one of the wrathful deities, let's say, or no, not always wrathful. It could be often a wrathful deity who is particularly a manifestation of utilizing that energy, So Vajrayogini, as I said, a classic one, she is this gorgeous, naked, red lady. Totally the practice is utilizing attachment, energizing attachment. This is one of the key things in Tantra, where you've got because you've got the 3 principal aspects of the path, you've completely subdued your body and speech, you've really subdued your mind, and renounced attachment. You've really got now, so when you've got that, you're able to utilize that attachment. They're the words for it. you're able to utilize anger. So your main way you suffer in your life, angry, some people get wildly angry, you know, and even have like a really dark looking aspect of their face. You could argue that their deity would be, could be, for example, Yamantaka, you know, or could be, say, one of in the family of Akshobhya. You could say like that. You could talk like that. So that's a way of identifying, Christine. We got to know your own mind well.
Yes.
And then sometimes also some people straight away, they hear about the deities, they immediately recognize, they immediately feel close to one of them. We do need all of them because we want to practice all qualities, but eventually you do identify, as they say, you can identify yourself, or your Lama will tell you, you know, but sometimes people recognize very strongly and know a particular deity is their one. They're very certain. That's from past familiarity. So then, of course, you would, and Lama Zopa talks about this in his book, and I'm going to quote from that, I think, in this session. When you've identified your main deity, then this is the one you practice most. You still have others to do because we still need those. And maybe if in your sadhana, you might do the more lengthy sadhana of your main deity and do the others in a shorter form, because we need them all anyway, you know. So that's really for sure what would happen. And it takes time. I mean, I know for myself for years, I've been around for a few years, and I took empowerments fairly soon. I had confidence in the path, you know, some familiarity must be, all of us. So I remember taking all these empowerments, and I was very sure, and one particular deity was my Yidam. Then out of the blue one year, Lama Zopa told me something else. And I was surprised to me. I didn't know. Other people recognized straight away. So, you know, if you do know, Christine, then great. Or you pray every day, you manifest, you do the practices, and you connect with your Lama in your heart, and you pray, please may I recognize my Yidam, please may I recognize. And very often, certainly with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when people write to Rinpoche requesting that he be their guru, he will often give you pages and pages of all your main, he'll give you advice, but also he's got almost like a form letter telling you your main deity and the particular practices you should do. I mean, many of the guys in prison who will never get an empowerment in prison, he will tell them their main deity, and he'll tell them to make prayers to become that deity, to one day receive the empowerment, even to say the mantra sometimes of that deity. Does that make sense, Christine?
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Any other questions, people? Okay. So let me find Lama Zopa's chapter in this book. It's very helpful.
Wolfgang has a question.
Who?
Wolfgang.
Oh, Wolfgang, yes. Where are you? I can't see you on my
am.
screen.
Hello, hello.
Oh, there you are. I can see you, my dear. Yes, talk to me.
Hello, Venerable Rubina. How is
Yes,
this possible that just by imagining a Buddha, you become a Buddha by yourself? It's like just imagining Federer Roger, you don't become a tennis player.
No, it's a good question. It's a very good question. That's a good question. Thank you. Because an actual Buddha is your mind. That's the actual Buddha, is your mind. So, and in a way, you can say that the same with tennis. The actual tennis, okay, the wisdom of tennis, the wisdom that is all the techniques, is all in the mind. You've got to have it in the mind. You've got to practice, because there's no choice with tennis. You've got to, manifest it with your hand. But think about that. If you don't have clearly in your mind exactly the wisdom that is tennis, you can't put your hand in the right direction. If you don't, I mean, I think you're a computer scientist. Is that right, Wolfgang?
It is correct.
Yeah. So then yourself, it's more intellectual. You don't have to wield tennis rackets, but even your hand on a computer typing certain keys, which is an action that you would do, you don't know what key to type if you haven't got the knowledge in your mind. So a scientist is a mental thing. A tennis player is the mental thing. And then the body and speech, clearly with tennis, or the body has to manifest very elaborate things. So the deity, the actual Buddha, actual Amitabha, for example, or, is the mind. That's the Dharmakaya, the actual subtle mental wisdom of that totally perfected. So, but in the meditations, because we're gross looking beings, we practice visualizing the Sambogakaya form. But in the meditations, by meditating on emptiness, that's when you become the Buddha. When you every day do your, let's say you do it. I mean, usually Amitabha is not a deity you take as your yidam. He's one of the families, and there are practices of doing Amitabha, but usually let's just say though it's Chenrezig. Let's say it's Chenrezig, and there's a particular form of Chenrezig, which is the one you take as your yidam, let's say, and he's in the Amitabha family. So then in your meditation, when the deity is outside you, then you dissolve the deity inside you. And then there's this elaborate practice, which we don't do until we've got the empowerment, where you literally do the dissolution of the normal components of Wolfgang, and you dissolve and completely into emptiness. If you had perfect concentration and you had the realization of emptiness, at that point, you would literally become the Dharmakaya in your own meditation, your training. That's the real training of dissolving into emptiness, going beyond the form of Wolfgang, identifying, dissolving of the deity, and you dissolving, and then you meditate on the emptiness, on the clear light mind, meditating on emptiness. One day you will achieve that realization of emptiness, and that is the component that that is your mind, and eventually with much practice, it's at that level that you become the Buddha. And then in your meditation, your training, and then in your meditation, you would then manifest yourself as the Buddha. And then you go around in your life trying to be like the Buddha, but it's your mind that becomes the Buddha. And then out of compassion, when you become the Buddha, you would literally manifest in different bodies, both the Sambogakaya form for the high beings and the Nirmanakaya form for other people, because the bodies of the Buddha are for the benefit of others only. The mind is the real Buddha. You become that. That's what you're doing in your meditation, literally becoming a Buddha, driven by your realization of emptiness. What do you think?
I'm very much overwhelmed, because till now, everything that I learned, I just learned the theory and then I practiced.
That's right. Same
Yeah,
here.
and now suddenly I was really overwhelmed when I took the Chenrezig empowerment. Suddenly I should imagine blue light and green light and red light. I thought, oh my goodness.
Why is that? So I understand. Wolfgang, I understand, darling. I understand. But this is the thing about these practices. I mean, Lama Yeshe says they're highly technical. So really, all those visualizations are the visualization of the Sambogakaya in the pure land of that Buddha at that subtle level, which is not what we see or even imagine. But it's a real reality of these Buddhas who manifest at a subtle level in their pure land. Every one of these Buddhas has an environment which is a pure manifestation of their enlightened mind. So we visualize all those mandalas. I know when I first heard these things to me, I thought, this is ridiculous. I can't imagine all this. But this is exactly the point. And this is where you practice seeing yourself as the Sambogakaya. It seems lovely almost to think of yourself as the Dharmakaya, because there's no visualization. It's just pure mind, That's delicious. Then suddenly, as you said, blue light, red light, mansions and deities all flying around. It's kind of extraordinary. That's the Sambogakaya form. Yes, I understand your point, Wolfgang. One step at a time. Fake it till you make it.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Any other questions?
Fernando?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Hello, Venerable Ravina. I have a question. Yes. Why is it that you don't, Lama Zopa Rinpoche has already told me what's my Chidam, but I ended up questioning myself, why you don't take Amitabha, who is a Buddha that I feel a lot of connection with? Why don't you take Amitabha as your Jidam?
It seems to be several questions in there. I'm not quite sure which point you're asking, so why not ask it again?
Why is it that you do not take Buddha Amitabha as your Jidam?
Oh, well, for example, it's because I don't know why. Very simple. There are Buddhas. Amitabha is another variation. There's two different forms. So Amitabha is the Nirmanakaya form, and then Amitabha is the Sambogakaya form of the same energy. I don't know why you don't take those. I have no idea. I don't know, but you seem to be more, the question was an earlier point that you made. You said Lama Zopa's told you you're Yidam, but why can't I see myself as another deity? What did you mean by that?
Well, Lama Zopa Rinpoche told me to take 2 highest yoga tantra initiations, which I guess that would be my Jidam, because he didn't mention.
Yeah, no, it could not always. No, he might tell you to do 2, but doesn't mean, I mean, you can then choose if you like one. Sometimes he would say that, and you can learn to focus on one from your own practice. Yes, you could do that. So what's the problem with that?
Well, I just mentioned it because he did previously. Well, and he said, do not take just 1, take 2, at least 2 of these, because he gave me like a list of different jidams that I could take, and he said, at least take 2. And then another guru told me that I could practice Amitajus. So it's something that I have done. But then again, during all my life, I have felt this intense connection to a certain degree with the Lotus family, with Amitabha's family.
That's right.
So
exactly.
It was just that your asseveration of you shouldn't take Amitabha as your Jidam.
I know, but I don't know. I just don't know the answer. I haven't studied Tantra enough. You know, I know very little about it. I don't know why you go and take Shobhya as your day, the 5 Buddha family heads. I don't know why. It's just this. It's not like meant to be mean or anything. You're not allowed to see yourself as Amitabha. Of course you can. I don't know why. Usually it's just not that way. There have to be logical reasons there. I don't know why. But having a connection with the Amitabha family, with the Lotus family, that's perfect. Nothing wrong. I feel the same. That's okay. That means there's certain deities. That means the attachment energy is the one that suits your nature, because he's the manifestation of attachment. That's the bigger learning from it. You know, that's all. That's marvelous. Nothing wrong.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I keep on talking, but I'm translating.
It's okay. Don't worry. Fernando, it's perfect. What else, people? Questions?
Barbara.
Yes, Barbara. Hello, darling.
Hi, Venerable Robina, thank you.
Yes.
I don't understand the significance of the colors.
What do you mean significant? Everything has color. We have color in our lives. What do you mean significance? It's just the way things are. Everything has color. You're wearing a blue dress. You've got a blue couch that you're sitting on. People, things, I mean, it's just color is color. What do you mean significance? Everything's significant. What do you mean by that, darling?
I guess I don't understand with the 5 Buddha families that I'm just now starting to understand.
Yeah.
The color or
I have
Tara
no
being,
idea, darling. I have no idea why Amitabha is red. I've got no idea, darling. I don't know why. I don't even ask the question. I don't care. I mean, I don't know what we mean by there has to be significance. Everything. I mean, the significance, because there is meaning. Everything physical is a manifestation of the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya is the main point. And then all I can know is over the centuries, things have been depicted this way and that. So Vajrayana, for example, is red. Haruka is blue. I don't know the logic and the evolution of those things. And I just, that's all. I don't know.
okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
I mean, yeah, not knowing the meaning is missing something, but I don't know the meaning. I don't know why it developed that Amitabha's red. I've got no idea. I have no idea how. I don't know why. So I don't think it just matters so much, the significance. Everything is significant, meaning everything has a meaning. So we just have to learn the meaning first, and then slowly, we might get the subtler meaning as we begin to actually experience the truth of these deities. I mean, for example, often they'll talk about blue as being, you know, to do with the mind, because it's to do with the sky, and that's blue, and that relates us to emptiness, space-like emptiness. So you can see some meaning in that, you know. Do you understand? I mean, you can sort of go behind it and try and imagine some meaning, but it's all very down to earth. It's not mystical. It's all very logical, because everything is color is a manifestation that we have cultivated, and we've literally invented over eons of being sentient beings. You know, color is part of the worlds we live in. So there is sort of meaning. I mean, you know, you can talk about red sometimes to do with fire or anger, or even red could be to do with desire. I mean, we can sort of see a meaning. We can imagine a meaning, you know. I think it comes as we develop spiritually.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable.
Good, darling. Yes. Who else? So let me just talk brief. Oh, yes, go on. Yes. Ariella, talk to me.
Good evening, Venerable.
Yes.
Not a question, but you speak so much about Roger Federer. He officially resigned today.
Oh, did he finally retire? Did he?
Yes.
Oh,
officially
oh,
today.
I think he was hoping to win one more big one, but he didn't.
I was holding it in. I said, I have to say it. I have to say it.
Oh, good. Thank you. I
So
didn't
there
know
I
he
go.
retired. Oh, wow. He
Officially,
finally
he
gave
has
up, Roger.
retired.
And so the same with Serena. She gave up. And now Djokovic doesn't get his vaccine, so he keeps missing out. So he'll retire eventually. And poor old Nadal is practically collapsing from pain, so he might retire. There'll be nobody left. All these people we don't know anything about. That's very fascinating. He finally left, did he? Wow.
I guess they're giving, the new generation.
That's exactly right. How interesting.
Yep.
Thank you for telling me.
Sure.
Okay, so listen, let me just read from Lama Zopa. In this chapter, just to finish, just listen, okay? And it's related very much to death, because this is the point about, okay, why death is what the yogis have been waiting for. Let me try and explain this just briefly, and we'll certainly go into this in more depth in another class. How many more classes have we got, Tara? Oh, gosh. We might have to have a second one somewhere. Snuck in another one somewhere. Let me see what my schedule looks like.
Maybe the last Thursday of the month.
Let me have a look at my schedule. Yeah, the next one is, oh yeah, we could do that. I'll be in Kathmandu. No, I won't. I'll be on the trek. I mean, if I've got a good connection up in the mountains, and you can get a good connection up there sometime, I'll be up. That could be difficult. We'll keep in touch. We certainly need to do more than one more class, I'd say. I'm sorry it's been a bit disrupted. But
Okay.
yeah, we'll work it out. So I'll just read this and listen to it and just hear the point that Lama's saying. The Rinpoche is saying. This is Rinpoche's teachings, okay? So generally, it's not permitted to openly give details of the methods that the great yogis use. However, I feel it would be useful to talk briefly about them here. Death is the moment they have been waiting for. At the point in the death process, when all the grosser consciousnesses have ceased, your gross senses, your grosser levels of your mental consciousness, and only the extremely subtle consciousness is left. You've got, this is me now, you've got gross consciousness, which is sensory, related to this body. Then you have subtle consciousness, which is referring to all your mental states, even though we access them at this gross level, they are in their nature more subtle. And then that's like all the mental states, when even they have completely all ceased in this death process, this deconstruction of the various components of your person, then all there is left is the very subtle consciousness, or the clear light consciousness. That's what they call it. And that, yeah, so when they've ceased and only have gotten out this grosser level and have only got the extremely subtle, as discussed, and Lama talks about it, these yogis, those who have observed karma well, kept their precepts purely, spent their lives training their minds in the clear light meditation, and have been able to recognize the base time clear light, the imagined visualized one, they're now able to recognize the clear light of death. All that means is the clear light mind is the subtlest level of our mind. We can't possibly get that until we've got shamatha, calm abiding. And this is the point about Tantra now. This is one of the key reasons Tantra is said to be so powerful, is that the level of subtlety you accomplish when you get shamatha, calm abiding, the sutra technique, isn't subtle enough. Isn't the subtlest, but it's only either through the death process where you access this subtlest level naturally, or if you're a great meditator, you're able, with the utilizing of the tantric methods, you're able to, in your meditations, you're able to get to the subtlest level in your practice on the basis of certain conditions. But the yogis who've meditated training in like theory, in training and faking it till you make it, in other words, when they've really familiarize their minds with the clear light meditation in their meditation in daily life, when they are going to death, why they're so welcoming death is because you go through the 8 stages naturally, and they're able to sustain concentration at each level. And then they get to the very clear, the very clear light, they get the actual one, they're able to then become a Buddha at that point with that subtle level. They can remain in meditation in the clear light, conjoined with realizing that. So the clear light mind, the subtle mind, is completely realizing emptiness. That's the easiest way to realize emptiness. It's like I use the analogy, the clear light mind is like the microscope of the mind. And the tantric methods get you to the microscope of the mind. And therefore, easily, with that level of mind, can you easily realize emptiness. And then the great yogis can meditate days, weeks, even months in that level, actually removing all the obstacles and becoming a Buddha. They remain in meditation clear, for 1 hour, 3 days, many months. Some meditators stay in the clear light meditation in their hermitage for years. His Holiness the Dalai Lama's root guru, Ling Rinpoche, for example, stayed in meditation for 13 days. Lama Yeshe too, he remained in meditation for 5 days. Lama Yeshe, he passed away in the hospital in Los Angeles. They even moved his body, drove him hundreds of miles up north to Vajrapani Institute, and then we kept him for 5 or 6 days. I was there at the funeral. His body was in the coffin at Vajrapani, and it didn't go rotten because his mind was there the whole time, and he was meditating in the clear light. These great yogis. So there are many examples like this. Apparently, one of the previous Ganden throne holders, that's the head of the Gelugpa tradition, spent some 21 days in meditation. And I remember at Buxa, when we escaped from Tibet, there was a Sera monastery monk in the same house that I lived in, a very simple monk who spent many days in meditation after passing away, after stopping breathing. It seems that the great 8th century bodhisattva Shantideva spent something like 30 years in meditation after he passed away. By concentrating in this subtlest state without distraction, some practitioners achieve enlightenment at this time. They actually realize the 3 bodies of a Buddha. They realize the Dharmakaya. They realize the Sambogakaya. They realize the Nirmanakaya. So they're able to transform ordinary death into the wisdom body, the Dharmakaya. We're going to talk about this next week. Ordinary intermediate state into the Sambogakaya, and the ordinary rebirth into the Nirmanakaya. Some practitioners can achieve enlightenment also in the intermediate state, as Lama Tsongkhapa did. Many Tibetan lamas have passed away in meditation since Tibetans first came to India as exiles in 1959. For those who ended their lives in Indian hospitals, it was difficult to receive permission to leave the body alone for a while. Ordinary people never believed that such a thing as meditating while passing away was possible because they never saw it happen. So the usual concept was that the moment a person died, a body should be taken out and burned before it began to smell. So thinking that a person was dead as soon as the breath stops, the doctors were amazed that these lamas could stay in meditation for long, long periods without any decay of the body. So far from being a bad smell in the room, there was a fantastic sweet smell due to the power of their realizations. So you too can transform death, intermediate state, and rebirth. We're going to go into this next week. The practices these yogis do are available to those who have taken a highest Tantra initiation. They're the ones that have all the technical aspects that are crucial. The other types don't. They, like for example, Chenrezig, Tara in the Kriya Tantra form don't have these these technicalities. But there are highest yoga tantra aspects of Chenrezig, for example, called Gyalwa Gyatso. He has his own wisdom consort. That's a highest yoga tantra aspect of Chenrezig. There's a highest yoga tantra aspect of Tara. So people have a connection with those. They could be their yidams at the highest yoga tantra level. So the highest yoga tantra, these are the quickest methods to achieve enlightenment in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. These practices, the highest yoga tantra ones, these sadhanas have a very special arrangement, and doing the sadhana every day, the complete sadhana, and this is to Christine, not just simply generating yourself as the deity and reciting the mantra without the mandala, not like that, is a very important preparation for death. You will understand this when you have received the commentaries on the generation stage and the completion stage practices. So every time you meditate, you are preparing your mental continuum by purifying ordinary death, ordinary intermediate state, and ordinary rebirth, enabling you to actualize the path time Dharmakaya, the path time Sambogakaya, the path time Nimanakaya, thus planting the seeds to achieve the result time, 3 bodies. Whether you do the long version of the sadhana of the deity you are committed to do, or the middle version, they both contain the essence of the generation stage practice, transforming the 3 experiences into the 3 bodies of a Buddha. And then on the day you die, because you have trained your mind by meditating like this every day, you are able to recognize what's happening, all the stages of death. You just don't fall into unconsciousness. You stay conscious at each level as you get more subtle, more subtle, more subtle. You sustain awareness at ever more subtle levels, and you're concentrating all the way through on emptiness, ever more subtly, ever more subtly, ever more subtly. And then then you are able to recognize the clear light. And then when you leave your body during the intermediate state and at the birth, you're able to even see yourself as the deity. So when you just recite the words, there is, of course, a positive imprint left on your mind, but you're not strongly preparing your mind as you would if you were actually meditating. Practicing like this is incredible. It is the quickest way to purify all of our delusions. So there's more there, but I'll do that for now. So clearly then we have to learn to understand these 3 stages. And once we do, again, like anything, once you learn it, you can kind of, you can make it make sense to us. So I think we need to go. This is very helpful, it's really essential. This is the essential components. And this is what generation stage refers to. The generation stage is where you train yourself in your meditation as seeing yourself as the deity. And, and Wolfgang, this is what part that seems so abstract and rather, suddenly, they even say in your meditation, you have achieved the realization of the generation stage when you can visualize perfectly, for as long as you like, yourself as the entire deity and the entire merit field, the entire pure land of that deity as tiny as, like as a tiny miniature visualization, and hold it perfectly. Somehow it's like so, and this is why if we don't understand the quality of the mind that we can accomplish by even using the sutra approach to getting single point of concentration, if we can't understand the level of mind that you can accomplish, the brilliance and capability of that subtle mind, then these tantric ones just seem like rocket science, seem like bizarre. So the generation stage is learning, training yourself to see yourself as the deity. And then when you do the meditations really properly, and some are very extensive, you actually visualize the entire pure land of the Buddha as well, the environment that is the manifestation of your own mind anyway, in perfect detail, That's how they talk. So we'll discuss these 3 kayas and how we can combine the death process and how this is related to our sadhana of these deities next week. Okay, people? Thank you so much. And we'll find another day to do things. I think it would be nice to do it from Laudo. And if there's a good connection, I can do it from Laudo. We'll see how we go. Otherwise, I'm moving to New York, everybody. I didn't tell everybody yet because I've just told the people in Santa Fe. They thought I was coming back, but I'm not. You heard that, Lou, didn't you? I'm going to miss you. Lou's moving to Santa Fe, aren't you? Is it all moving forward, Lou?
Yes, I should be there November 1st.
Good. Well, I'll see you at some point, but I won't see you then. I'm going to move into my new place in Manhattan. I've got a new place in Manhattan. Somehow it came about. I don't know how it just came about. So I've got a new house in Greenwich Village in Manhattan. So the feeling I have is this is my retirement. This is my cave. So I will travel more, but not so much anymore because I've never had a house of my own ever. Well, briefly, when I was 23 and I went to London in 1967, and then in 68, I think I rented what they called a bed sitting room, which is now fancy. It's called a studio in Swiss Cottage in London for £5 a week. And I went out and bought dishes and spoons. This is the last time I've ever had a place in my own name. So now here I am, nearly dead. And I've got this place in Greenwich Village due to the kindness of various people. And yeah, they're moving. My friends have driven over there right now. They're taking deliveries of my new statues from Kathmandu right now in New York. And I'll go there after Laudo. I'll go to New York. And then I'd hope to just do my editing, writing Lama Zopa's biography, running my Bodhichitta Trust, and its investments. So I want to make lots of money so I can help many projects. And what else will I be doing? And my Zoom teachings. And I will come on an aeroplane occasionally. So that's my decision. So it seems like, unless I die tomorrow, if I continue to live and get there in October, that's the plan. Okay, people. So if I don't have a session from Laudo, I'll do it from my new place in Manhattan. Okay. And I'll show you my new statue. I bought a nice big 24-inch Buddha statue. All right. Thank you, precious ones. So we dedicate, thinking we've heard these few teachings in my simple words. May all these seeds be planted. May we nourish these seeds. May we understand these practices. May we have some enthusiasm to get these practices so we can achieve our own amazing potential as quickly as possible, so we can be of benefit to suffering sentient beings. Jangchub, Semchog, Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyuchi, Ke Pa Nyampa, Me Pa Yang Gongne Gondu Helbashog. May we never develop, even for a moment, wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious spiritual mentors, our gurus, our lamas, and with faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness, may their full inspiration flow into our hearts. Thank you, people. Thank you so much. See you, darlings.